lives this evening, but we do have what appears to be an impactful storm system that is going to be rolling through primarily southwest Montana overnight tonight through Wednesday morning. So I'm going to be running through this a little bit quicker. Going to make sure everything's working here behind the scenes, but I'll flip this around, show you those current conditions, and you'll see one very clear area where we are dealing with some of that heavy snowfall right now, and that is at least on the East Ridge in Butte. So you can give me about 30 seconds to a minute here. It'll give me a chance to make sure everything is working behind the scenes as it should be. Again, 95% of the time it is, but I'd rather make sure we are in good working order. So let's see, there's that. There we go. Well, again, I hope you all are having a great evening and staying warm and just enjoying the sort of the first night of the work week. But overall, again, if you're just tuning in, we've got an impactful storm system that is set to move into southwest Montana specifically. But all of western Montana will see the effects of this, but it's going to be much more focused for places like Butte, back over towards Bozeman. And Bozeman specifically, we're going to focus a fair amount on the Gallatin Valley, as well as passes nearby. So talking about Bozeman Pass, as far west as, say, Homestake Pass, Norris Hill, Menida Pass, Targhee, and Reynolds Pass is closer to West Yellowstone. We could be talking about some heavy snowfall accumulations. There's still a fair bit of uncertainty with this storm system, and I'll explain more about that coming up here in just a second. But everything is working as I was hoping it was. But if you're tuning in or just tuning in, certainly let us know where you're tuning in from, and especially if you're down into southwest Montana, are you ready for more snow? Because in many areas, whether you're ready for it or not, it is coming. There's kind of no getting around that. There will be a few places that likely don't see snow and it stays as all rain, and that rain is going to be the big question mark and how much warm air gets settled into southwest Montana. So let's jump right on into this. And again, I'll go back to those live conditions across the area. We're seeing the snow on the East Ridge there in Butte. We are seeing the snow falling down in the valleys, at least as of the report from the airport. 32 degrees in the mining city, 39 and rain in Bozeman, and that temperature tonight is going to be very important for the Gallatin Valley. Back towards Kalispell and Missoula, 41, 42 degrees with cloudy skies. Likely won't be talking a whole lot about northwest and much of west central Montana in this update. Places like Potomac, Seeley Lake, I'll be making a few mentions of, but valleys west of the divide, not as much. Going into the general upper air pattern and what is causing this next storm system that's rolling in, it's this trough of low pressure, and you see these little spins mixed in here. We've had a little one right here, and you can see that starting to take shape. Those little low pressure systems are essentially going to enhance the moisture and enhance the lift in the atmosphere, leading to more snowfall or more precipitation in general. But with the orientation of this trough, this is going to track a lot of these down across southwest Montana. So there's going to be multiple waves of moisture, and we've already seen one of those this afternoon. It's sort of what helped to drive some of those showers and thunderstorms that we saw throughout the day. We're still dealing with rain in our valleys and some snow in northwest, west central Montana. Snow levels right now I would say about 5,000 feet, but those are falling this evening, and how quickly they fall into southwest Montana is going to play a big role in I'll say the level of impact with this storm system. So look, let me stop this right now. We'll do a quick look. You saw a few lightning strikes pop up here and there right at the start of this. They're closer to, say, Drummond over towards Garrison in that area. Those thunderstorms, those weak thunderstorms, are dissipating in their intensity. There are still, showers about, but the instability is starting to diminish now that we've gone beyond sunset. US 93, Highway 200, we're looking at all rain, snow up into the Missions, and this is one area we could be talking about heavier accumulations, the Mission as well as the Swan Mountains, maybe of about 5 to 10 inches of snow over the next, say, 24 to 36 hours. We'll track a little bit further south, and same story. Snow levels are a little bit lower down into southwest Montana, like we were saying a moment ago. Butte, we're already looking at the snowfall there. I think for the most part, we will stay as snow towards the mining city, but you see a little bit further off to the east, Whitehall, Three Forks, Bozeman, we are still in the rain. Temperatures are still above freezing in these areas, but those will be falling below freezing as we go later on tonight. And plenty more moisture is back to the east. Let me see if I can change this radar view really quick, if it wants to work for me here. Maybe not. There we go. But you see, it's a little bit dispersed out here. It's because that low pressure system that's still developing back here to the south is starting to deepen. So it's going to take a little bit of time for that. But as we go into tomorrow morning, specifically, I'd say from tomorrow morning through later on Tuesday evening, once that really gets developed, I think that's when things are going to change in a big hurry. And something we'll have to keep an eye on. Now, going into the winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, starting off with those advisories, we're seeing those here in the blue. This includes the Bitterroot Sapphire Mountains, Butte Blackfoot region, as well as for the Potomac-Sealy Lake region. In general, we're going to be looking at, well, let me get the timing of these. Let me pull up all the information. There's a lot of information on this particular graphic, and we'll go into more detail about some of this. But as for those winter weather advisories, those are now in effect through either noon or midnight on Tuesday. So further west you are, Bitterroot Sapphire Mountains, those will be expiring at noon. Closer to the divide, we're talking about midnight on Tuesday. And then we get to the winter storm warnings. Those are all in effect now as well, continuing through midnight Tuesday or 6 a.m. Wednesday. So really in this zone, the Elkhorn Boulder Mountains, we're talking midnight. Further east towards the Big Belt, Castle and Bridger Mountains, the Gallatin Valley specifically, and the Gallatin, Madison County Mountains, and Centennial Mountains. Those will be lingering on through 6 a.m. on Wednesday. I forgot to mention with the winter weather advisory, since I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on those, lower elevations, we're talking about 1 to 4 inches on average, as is the case with all winter storms. Those could be a little bit higher, some localized heavier totals. But that said, the uncertainty with this storm system is higher than average in comparison to storms we've talked about in the past. There's still a lot of question marks with this one that still have to be ironed out. Passes and mountains within those winter weather advisories, places like, I'll say, McDonald Pass, Rogers Pass, even getting closer to Homestake, we're talking about 2 to as much as 10 inches on average. Yes, that is a wide range. But it kind of adds to the, still lack of real clarity of what we're going to see with this storm system. Before I get too much further in here, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask those in the chat section. I know I'm going through a lot of information in a quick hurry, but I'll try and keep an eye on that as well. So my main focus is going to be really down here. Again, I'll look at Homestake Pass, but then down here towards Bozeman Pass and the Gallatin Valley is going to be that main focus. And we'll look at the snowfall amounts in a little bit more detail. But in general, with those winter storm warnings, valleys, we're talking 4 to 10 inches. Mountain passes 5 to 16 inches. And then those mountain peaks were over a foot. In a few areas, we could be closer to 2 feet. Wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour will be possible. Could lead to some blowing and drifting snow in a sense, but this is going to be a heavy, wet snow. So that is not as likely, at least once it's fallen and is starting, is sitting on the ground already. So going into Future Tracker, it's done a pretty decent job picking up on the scattered activity back across northwest, west central Montana. You notice how we're starting to get more of those darker blues showing up there west of Butte and Dillon, over towards places like Wise River, Anaconda, and down into the Jackson, Polaris, and Wisdom areas of southwest Montana. This will continue to build overnight tonight. You notice it kind of coalesces a little bit further north. If you're watching the 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock broadcast, this was a little bit further south. This is something we'll have to keep an eye on. In my opinion, I think this is a little too far north of where it's consolidating. We could see some of that more towards places like Helena into Powell County, but I think it's going to be more in this zone. Again, this is just one model, Most of the other forecast models are showing this coalescing a little bit further south, so Butte, Dillon, Ennis, Bozeman, for some of that heaviest snowfall. But this is another one of those uncertainties that we're just going to have to watch overnight to see how this all plays out. But in this general sense, we're talking about moderate to maybe some heavy snowfall for areas on Interstate 90 and north. Again, like I said, I think this is going to be a little bit more widespread further to the south. We'll just have to watch that and see what happens overnight tonight. We'll continue to see those showers. Butte, Bozeman, primarily through, this is into tomorrow morning, but you see it becomes a little more scattered. Another little low pressure starts to develop back to the south. And at times with this, we could be talking snowfall rates throughout tomorrow of an inch or more. And that can pile up extremely quickly, but it also can lead to, especially with it being a heavy wet snow, that can lead to some really, really tricky travel conditions. And that's going to be the main concern, even more so than anything. Regardless of what kind of snowfall we see in our valleys, passes, especially along the interstate here, Bozeman, Homestake, passes, Cardwell Hill maybe, as well as down towards Norris Hill, we could be talking about moderate to major travel impacts. Would not surprise me into tomorrow morning even that we're talking about chains being required for towing units over some of those passes. But morning and evening impacts, especially towards Bozeman, but maybe even into Butte, could be impacted tomorrow. This model, again, I'm not fully convinced that this is how it's going to play out, because I think this type of snowfall that we're seeing here for Wednesday morning at 1:30, this may be more of what we're seeing all day down towards Bozeman. But this again, if this particular model is true, maybe the heaviest snowfall holds off until late Tuesday night and into Wednesday. Just one of those trends we'll have to watch. But that continues all the way into Wednesday morning. And by Wednesday afternoon, we're transitioning more back over to the spotty showers, rain-snow mix in our valleys. But one note I do want to bring up, and even if we do see consistent, more widespread snowfall in southwest Montana, there may be enough warm air. And this is the big, big question here. There may be enough warm air that moves into the Gallatin Valley that may actually transition that snow over to rain. And at that point, then we're not accumulating any snowfall. And if that were to happen, it's really comes down to the duration of that transition over to rain from snow. That's literally just going to be something that we have to watch and see through the day tomorrow. More indications this afternoon and evening with forecast models are showing this staying as snow. So yeah, I'll say this, it's kind of a forecaster's headache right now, trying to get all of these little nuances balanced out. So, for example, and I'll show more details about this here in a second. Earlier in the day, a few forecast models for Bozeman specifically, we were talking less than 2 inches of accumulation. Not really a major impact by any means, temperatures staying closer to freezing, if not above, so very little travel impact in Bozeman itself. Other models at the same time are showing the potential of snowfall of maybe like 8 to 12 inches, if not a few more higher than that. And that would lead to some much more significant impacts, especially with the heavy, wet nature of this snowfall. So, like I said, this is a forecaster's headache, and because of just that range, we held off on declaring a weather alert day for Bozeman. Just as things have progressed through the night, I think it's better to be safe than sorry. So we are going to go with a weather alert day for Tuesday and Wednesday morning for the Gallatin Valley and really the mountains surrounding there. So we are going to have a little bit higher level of, I say concern. I don't want to use concern in that sense because it's winter weather, it's Montana. We know what kind of impacts that we can see from that. But as we've seen in the past, especially with some of these late season storms, the last 2 years, we've had some major backups on Bozeman Pass. Last year, we had the one where people were stuck on the interstate on I-90 for 12 to 18 hours due to a foot or more of snow over Bozeman Pass. And I'm trying to remember. I think that was it was actually in May. So we're still about a month ahead of that. But then the year before that, we had that major snowstorm in Bozeman right about this same time of the year. I think it was about mid to late March where parts of the Gallatin Valley had 18 to 20 inches. So it's the time of the year we can get these big type of systems, but there's still, again, with those past storms, still some question marks about what ends up actually happening with that. So, long story short, weather alert day is coming for Bozeman for tomorrow. And I'm going to here's the snowfall forecast. This is going to be for our passes specifically. For most of our passes along the divide, now granted, this is going off of one of the models that doesn't have as much snowfall back off to the west. The one we were looking at would bring more snow. So I think we're probably more in that 2 to 8 inch range for places like Rogers and McDonald passes compared to 1 to 4. Homestake, 1 to 4 is showing here. Other models are more in that 5 to 10 inch range. And then we have Bozeman Pass, where some forecast models are saying as little as, say, 4 to 6 inches. Others are showing as much as 18 to 24. So there will be travel impacts, especially if we see something like this. If we see a foot to a foot and a half of snowfall towards Bozeman Pass, that is just going to lead to a major mess. Same thing for Homestake at 5 to 10 inches. But again, this is looking through Thursday at noon. And then let me go down to our valleys, and we're going to be looking at a similar type of situation here. This particular forecast model, which has, I feel like it has a pretty decent idea. This is also running a little further north, so maybe places like Helena we don't see as much. It just really comes down to the placement of that low pressure system. But Butte, Dillon, probably about 1 to maybe 4 inches of accumulation. Maybe the same story for West Yellowstone, but this is going off of that further north model run. Other ones that are a little bit further south would bring those snowfall totals up closer, maybe 3 to 8 inches. Towards West Yellowstone, this particular model has Bozeman right around 4 to 8 inches. And that, I think, is a solid range. Again, that gets us into that 4 to 10 inch range that the winter storm warning itself is calling for from the National Weather Service. But I do want to go into one more look at this. And this is looking at multiple forecast models. And this is actually a big change in comparison to what we were looking at even 2 hours ago. And this is, again, just more fuel to the fire of saying this is a forecaster's headache. So these models, 3, 4, and 6 inches. This is talking about a 24-hour period really from now. Now we're seeing 2 inches for this one particular model, the graph model. And these are all just different forecast models coming up, I say, with different solutions based on very similar inputs that are being put into them. From the model prior to this, of the same model, which is the graph, this is kind of our in-house forecast model, it was actually the highest about 2 hours ago until the new runs came in. That was showing about 13 to 15 inches of snowfall. So again, that just adds to more of there are still a lot of question marks that still have to be answered. We're going to have to watch this very closely overnight tonight, and especially into tomorrow morning. Chief Meteorologist Brooke Foster will be in sort of helping to get those, let everybody know where those travel impacts are, what those newest runs of forecast models are showing. These recent ones are a little bit lower in comparison to what we were looking at, say, 2-3 hours ago. But they have been, I'll say, flip-flopping back and forth all afternoon. So just as much as us trying to forecast it is, our forecast models are having a really hard time with it as well. But that, again, ties back into the fact that we were on the fence about declaring the weather alert day for Tuesday for Bozeman, but with the likely travel impacts that are going to be ongoing over our mountain passes, regardless of what happens in the valleys, feel like it's safer, better to be safe than sorry. Pull the trigger on it and just be like, hey, let's go to a little bit higher alert level for folks and just give everybody as much of a heads up as we can with this storm system. I'd love to be able to come back on here in 2 days and be like, well, we completely bombed that forecast. That didn't happen at all. We saw less than an inch of snow in Bozeman and no issues whatsoever over our passes. I don't think that's going to happen, but I would be more than happy to say, yes, that's, come back here on Wednesday and say that's exactly what happened. So hopefully we don't deal with major impacts. I mean, even with this type of snowfall, with it being heavy and wet, that could lead to power outages and things of that nature. So another one of those aspects that we'll just have to keep an eye on with this storm system. But even after we get past this storm, Tuesday into Wednesday, we're not done with the active weather yet. Thursday into Friday, here comes that next wave. This will bring more chances of rain and snow, and it's not just for southwest Montana. By the time we get into Thursday and Friday, all of western Montana will see at least a higher chance of precipitation once again. And temperatures are going to stay on the cool side through the weekend for Bozeman. But notice how those temperatures really start to warm up into the early parts of next week. Southwest Montana, we're probably going to be in the 50s and low 60s Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But back to the west, northwest, west central Montana, we could be talking temperatures back into the upper 60s and lower 70s as high pressure begins to build in. So if we can get past, say, the next 3 to 4 days of more wintry type weather, especially for places like Bozeman, Butte, Dillon, Ennis, we're going to see at least some improvement going on from there. But I think that's everything I had there. Got about 15 minutes to try and get ready for the 10 o'clock show. I do want to show one last thing, and I'm going to bring this over to the other screen really quick once I get it loaded up, because it's a very interesting look as to more of that uncertainty. And this is more information directly from the National Weather Service, if I can get this to come over nicely. Got too many cords. I'm getting caught up in things. Let's see. This is going to be a little bit small, so I might have to do some workarounds to bring this a little bit closer. But this is right off of the winter weather forecast from the National Weather Service in Great Falls. And that includes southwest Montana. So these are the newest updates in the time period from essentially noon today through 6 a.m. on Thursday morning. And I'm going to show you, we're looking at Bozeman Pass. Here is the range. Low end forecast, 5 inches, expected 11 inches, but the high end forecast, we're talking 2 feet of snow. So we have a range of 5 to 24 inches at Bozeman Pass. Bozeman itself, 2 inches is the low side, 6 inches is what's expected, but the high end of this, we could be talking as much as 17 inches. So with the low end and high end, we're talking about a 9 in 10 chance of seeing, you know, between 2 and 5 inches for Bozeman and Bozeman Pass. High end amount is a 1 in 10 type of chance, so 17 to 24 inches. So that gives you the sense of what we could see from this storm system. But even places like Dillon, we may see no snow, but at the same time, on the high end, we could see 6 inches of snow. So that gives you, again, another sense. Ennis, we're talking maybe less than an inch. 1 inch is expected, but we could see as much as 10 inches. And it all is going to come down to, and really all of our valley areas are kind of in that same boat. Bozeman, likely the highest totals when it comes to our valley areas for the storm system. But again, that just ties back into the fact that this is going to be very much a watch and see and kind of wait and now, I'll call it nowcast, analyzing what's happening in the moment throughout the day tomorrow. So a lot of questions still have to be answered. There is, at least from a spring snow event, this has a pretty high ceiling, but it also has a pretty low floor as well. So we're going to kind of, at least for right now, take the middle of the road path. Bozeman likely looking at about 4 to 8 inches. Mountain passes, Homestake, Bozeman Pass, Norris Hill, Cardwell Hill. I think in general we're probably talking about 3 to as much. Well, let me just go back. Homestake Pass, Bozeman Pass. Let me just focus on those two really quick. Probably talking in that range of anywhere from 6 to 18 inches on average. Could see more, could see less. Cardwell and Norris Hills, they're a little bit lower in elevation, so we may be more in that 3 to 6 inch range. On average, though, as we were looking on that last chart, Cardwell Hill had a low chance, or the low end forecast of 0 to 1 inches. So overall, again, big takeaway, could see some impactful snowfall down in southwest Montana, passes and valleys. So be prepared for winter driving conditions. Could see moderate to major travel impacts. Winds 35 miles per hour are going to be possible with this into tomorrow, Wednesday morning as well. So the Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning commutes, as well as the Wednesday evening commute towards Bozeman, could be impacted, at least in a minor way, if not more moderate to major types
of impacts. We do have the weather alert day that's coming for Tuesday. Again, hopefully I can just come back on Wednesday and say, hey, it just didn't come together and we didn't see any kind of major impacts or travel impacts of that nature. I'd be more than happy to come back and say that. But again, confidence is increasing at least a little bit that we're going to be dealing with some impacts from this winter storm. Back to the west, northwest, west central Montana, much quieter conditions. We still will be dealing with some scattered showers throughout the overnight period and into tomorrow, but it likely will not be anywhere near as impactful or as high of a ceiling as what we'll deal with for areas near and east of Interstate 15 for tomorrow. So I got to get wrapped up so I can get a few things prepped in here for the 10 o'clock show, but tune into our live broadcast at 10 o'clock for the latest news and weather updates. It'll be me and Jacob Owens at the anchor desk, and then tomorrow morning, Chief Meteorologist Brooke Foster and Jason Hurst on NBC Montana Today. And Brooke will be keeping a very close eye on those travel impacts, what we're seeing into tomorrow morning, as well as those new forecast model runs and how much snow we could see for places like Bozeman tomorrow afternoon and into Wednesday. And then I'll be back tomorrow evening for the latest updates, what we're expecting for the afternoon, evening, and into Wednesday morning. So thank you all for tuning in this evening. Certainly stay warm, stay safe out there, and if you're down in southwest Montana, just be prepared for accumulating snowfall tomorrow. There is still that chance it could swap over to rain. We just don't know if and when that's going to happen, and it's going to be very, very close on how much warm air gets in there. So I think I'm going to wrap it up from there. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great evening, and I will see you all on the next one. With NBC Montana, I'm meteorologist Mitchell Coombs.